glad you're here. It's bright and early. We have an amazing, amazing panel for you today. Being a Disney legend is it plays with your mind a little bit, because to me, Disney legends are people like Mark Davis and Mary Blair and Bob Burr, people that have worked with Walt. So to be included in the same sentence as that is humbling, I think is the only word for it. But our guests today are all on this journey of a very special day for them, because tonight at the Honda Center, they too will become Disney legends in the same sentence as all those people. So it's a big day, a fun day, and we're going to get started in a second. I have a special guest with us today, the gentleman who's a sculptor who designed the Disney Legends trophy. So if you've seen it, and you will see it tonight, it's a beautiful sculpture. And he's here with us today, sitting in the front row, Andrea Favalli. Andrea, would you stand up and wave for me? Amazingly gifted person, and thanks for the trophy. It's really good. It's really good. We're going to jump in. The first of our panelists. Oh man. These introductions could go on for hours. I could spend hours with each one of these people. But first up, costume designer. One of the first, if not the first costume designer to be acknowledged as a Disney legend. Please welcome to the stage, Colleen Atwood. Next to the stage, again, so much to say about this gifted person who served the Walt Disney Company in so many different ways. Please welcome soon-to-be Disney legend, Martha Blandings. This next gentleman I have known for a long, long time, happily so, an animator who animates Mickey Mouse. So in a way, he is Mickey Mouse. Please welcome Mark Henn. An extraordinary Imagineer, explorer, creator of worlds, Joe Rohde, ladies and gentlemen. How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Great. Good. Big day today. Whew. I know. I actually agonized over what to wear today because Colleen is here.
You did well.
Thanks. Yeah, I didn't agonize that much. So I think that I want to start out with storytelling, because I think the thing that unites us all, and what makes Disney special, whether it's the parks or any kind of entertainment, is the storytelling. And that's what Walt Disney stressed himself, and what you folks all stress in your work. And I think that's what's crucial and what's magical. People talk about the Disney magic. Well, it's, as human beings, we crave storytelling as our coping mechanism. You talk about this a lot in your work, and I've heard you speak about everything from, at the Explorers Club to your work about Disney. Joe, what's that storytelling mean to you in your work? How does that manifest itself in how you approach something, like the Alani, or something like all the things you've done, which is, your body of work is spectacular. Talk about storytelling and what you've done in that time here.
Well, to me, story, when we say this word story, we're talking about something that means something. There's something underneath.
Right.
We pay attention to the story because as it unveils itself, as we keep unwrapping it, it's like it gets richer and more meaningful, and we realize we're not just taking our time listening to a thing that happened.
Yeah.
We're listening to something that has meaning, that we can use, that we can live, that we can feel, that's what makes it a story.
Yes. Yeah, and that's something that even sitting here today as a community, wanting to hear your stories is part of that. It really is. I mean, Colleen, you do that in a very character-based way. You're creating story by trying to use your work to help the actor or the director create a piece of storytelling. How do you approach that? Do you think about that? Is it intuitive? What's your sense of that character creation?
Well, for me, again, it begins with a script, what the story is.
Yeah.
And then my job is to help figure out how to tell the story in a way visually that can connect with an audience. So if somebody's a prince, for instance, it's kind of nice if they can be a prince that you believe is also a person. It isn't just there in some stiff, fancy outfit to be a prince. The same with the princess. I think that if you can connect the humanity of a character within the story, no matter what their level of existence is in the world, rich, poor, famous, invisible, by doing that, then you've done your job telling the story. That the audience, somebody will go, oh, I know that guy, I know who that is.
Yeah, you can relate to it on a personal level. And even Martha, I was thinking about your career, which is spectacular. And as a tour guide at one point in your career, it's almost the ultimate front line of storytelling for Disney, because you're not just walking around waving your arms. You're giving your guests, you're imparting to them a story about the nuts and bolts of the park, but also the history of the park, and also trying to give them a day that is really special. So in a sense, you're aware of the boots on the ground storytelling for for the audience. Do you agree? Was that kind of how you approached it, or felt about it, or look back on it now?
No, I agree. Many of our guests know a lot about Disney and Walt Disney, Disneyland, our Imagineers, and they have questions. And it was more of me validating their questions, answering their questions for them. And then I took it from being a tour guide, and then when I went into special events and creating an event, you tell a story because I'm working around the merchandise, but you want more than just the merchandise. You want the experience. And so I'm lucky because I was able to have people like you and Joe Brody to be a part of the event and tell your story. That's what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
They wanted to hear that and more.
Yeah, isn't that funny? I mean, you really notice that because there's such a hunger for that I don't see in there's certainly other theme parks and other places out there in the world. There's something about Disney that has that at the core of it all. And Mark, you've experienced that too, just to kind of finish that idea. We all think of Mark as the ladies' man, and not in a.
My wife's down here, be careful.
Yeah. I apologize. You have this gift to be able to capture appealing, I'm using an Eric Larson word, appealing characters, and have animated Belle in Beauty and the Beast, and Jasmine, and so many absolutely beautiful characters, Mulan and Mickey Mouse. That appeal and that character creation is like a gift you have. And like all of you, I know it's been a hard-fought, difficult gift at times. What's that like when you sit down with a blank piece of paper and go, oh man, I'm entrusted with this character that has to fill a place in this script? Is that nerve-wracking?
At times.
Yeah.
And well, particularly when I animated 3 of the princesses kind of back to back to back. When I got to number 3, I was like, oh boy, because I don't want to just repeat what I did on number 1 and number 2.
You were really good at it though.
So, but,
we all think of you as a princess.
But no, as you've talked about, and because you and I kind of grew up in the same environment, it's about character.
Yeah.
And that's what Eric Larson, as you mentioned, was always kind of beating into our young brains about character and sincerity and individuality. When Walt, talked about the 7 dwarves, they could have just as easily been, all 7 of the same, but he made it, 7 very distinct individuals, which was kind of a pattern that was established, I think, early on.
Yeah.
That all the animators, you know, whatever the characters were, because I've done everything from princesses to mice and cats and dogs and a crazy rabbit in there too. So, you know, but it's all about the character. It's all about creating a unique character.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Eric Larson, Mother Night Old Man, who was your mentor. Joe, who were your mentors when you were coming up? Not only at Disney, but just in general. Or early movies you saw, things that made you think like, oh, I would like to do that. I would like to be a world builder.
Well, I grew up on film sets because my dad was a cinematographer.
Really?
And by good fortune, he tended to work on films that a little boy would want their dad to work on. So I had the privilege of like crawling around on the original Planet of the Apes, Ape City Village, when it was empty, you know, and abandoned. He worked on Batman, and he worked on this science fiction Irwin Allen TV show called Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Yeah.
And so you have to be really old and obscure to remember that.
Show hands who's old and obscure.
Anyway, so in a way, my mentors may have been invisible to me in that they were the set designers of the sets of these films that I was privileged to be able to see at such a formative age, that I never did look at things without the idea that someone is behind this.
Right.
Someone made this.
Right.
Even my first trip to Disneyland, I already had this sense of like, people made this.
Yeah.
This is a work of art that people made.
Yes.
And yet it is convincing, yet it is full of emotion.
Right.
And once I got to Imagineering, Ryman was one of the people who I attached to. We'd go over to his house, and the thing that impressed me was, of course, he's a draftsman, he can draw.
Yeah.
But also like hundreds and hundreds of books in there.
Yeah.
And that also was something very formative to me. This is the whole thing about things being about something, right?
Yes.
This is a picture, but this picture resonates and has meaning and has power because of those books.
Yeah.
Because what's inside the brain of the guy who drew it, and that comes from experience and from study and from knowledge, and that creates the depth,
Yes.
in my opinion.
And those guys and girls were so well-traveled. They had bigger lives than I think, certainly that I did. You know, I think of Mark Davis, who traveled to New Guinea at a time when it wasn't easy to go to New Guinea, you know, to be able to do that. Colleen, you pull a lot of that world reference into your work and deal with a lot of cultural references and then spin it to get something like, you know, Alice in Wonderland or take a circus movie like Dumbo and spin it into something that is perfect for the cinema. What are your inspirations? Who are your mentors kind of coming up that kind of filled your bucket with those inspirations?
Well, I think I grew up in a very, like, a million miles away from even knowing what made a movie. And so for me, it was like the great escape to go to a movie and see like The Pit of a Pendulum or like the old horror films
Cool.
that I grew up with. And then re-educating myself later with some films that were older films, like the musicals from the 40s and 30s and early Disney. Like my first movie memory is of Snow White. It's the first movie I remember from my childhood. But I think for me now, like that it's really beautiful, like when you do a job like Memoirs of a Geisha, to explore a culture, do it within the period, but again, I was really afraid, you know, when you are culturally exploring another world, to make it, you either decide to make it perfect within that parameter, or you make a discovery. And when I did that movie, I was in Japan and I went to a display in a big department store in Tokyo, which they do